aid per day from the pier, with the number growing to 150 as operations move forward.
Richard Engel, thank you for that. And that's going to do it for us this busy week. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you back here Monday. And don't forget, you can catch our show online around the clock on YouTube and other platforms. I'm Ana Cabrera reporting from New York. Jose Diaz Balart picks up our coverage right now.
Good morning. It is 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. I'm Jose Diaz Balart. Former President Donald Trump's New York hush money trial is off today as the former president attends his youngest son's high school graduation in Florida. The day off comes after former Trump lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen spent another day on the stand being cross-examined by Trump attorney Todd Blanche. Blanche may have been able to poke a hole in Cohen's credibility as a witness during questioning about a phone call from October 2016. More now from NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett. Laura.
Good morning to you. Michael Cohen has been nearly unflappable on the witness stand as the defense tries to show this jury that he has changed his story about things big and small. The word lie used more than 50 times in court just yesterday. The jury may not remember every single defense attack line, but they only need one person not to buy his story.
This morning, Donald Trump's hush money cover-up trial inching towards a final conclusion after a bruising cross-examination of his former fixer, Michael Cohen. The defense team trying to portray the state's key witness as a serial liar, someone who's misled Congress, prosecutors, a federal judge, and now this jury. Trump attorney Todd Blanche digging into a piece of Cohen's testimony from earlier this week, where he said he informed Mr. Trump by phone in October 2016 that his payoff of Stormy Daniels would soon be handled. Cohen originally told the jury he called Mr. Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, who passed the phone to the former president. Blanche raising his voice Thursday saying that was a lie. The jury then shown never-before-seen text messages suggesting a completely different explanation for the October call, that Schiller was helping Cohen cope with a teenage prankster at the same time. Blanche returning to a log showing the call in question lasted less than 2 minutes. Cohen appearing caught off guard, saying, "I believe I also spoke to President Trump and told him everything regarding the Stormy Daniels matter." Blanche shooting back, "We are not asking what you believe. This jury does not want to hear what you think happened." Cohen then later saying, "I don't recall telephone calls on a specific date going back to 2016.
It was a fascinating day.
Nearly all of the cross-exam this week squarely focused on Cohen's credibility, as he is the one who paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 on the eve of the 2016 election, and the only witness who has testified the former president directed Cohen to do it to protect the campaign, which Mr. Trump denies. Cohen's motive for lying about that now, according to the defense, payback. His own words on podcast episodes played for the jury.
Revenge is a dish best served cold. And you better believe I want this man to go down and rot inside for what he did to me and my family.
Now, these lawyers are not done with Cohen yet. He will be back on the stand Monday for more cross-examination, and then the prosecution will get their chance to redirect and clear up anything he said. Back to you.
Laura Jarrett, thank you very much. And with us now to talk more about this, Barbara McQuaid, a former U.S. attorney who is now a law professor at the University of Michigan, and Joyce Vance, a former U.S. attorney who is a law professor at the University of Alabama and a newly minted senior fellow at New York University's Brennan Center for Justice. Barbara and Joyce are both MSNBC legal analysts. Also with us, MSNBC anchor Katie Tour, who was in the courtroom for yesterday's cross-examination. So, Katie, let me start with you. What was it like yesterday in there?
You know, I want to point out one thing that our colleague Laura Jarrett just had in that story she did for the Today Show this morning. That was that Mea Culpa podcast moment. And that was a really striking moment in the courtroom because up until then, the jury had just been hearing Michael Cohen's direct testimony. And I have to say, I mean, I know Michael Cohen really well. A lot of reporters do. I think anybody who watches television probably knows Michael Cohen well. He's got a very big personality. He's loud. He is can be abrasive. And inside the courtroom, he was very subdued. He was very calm, serene, almost had a hangdog quality to him. Maybe not serene, deflated is the way I would describe him, answering Todd Blanche's questions with yes sir, no sir, and that's correct for the most part. And then there was that moment where Todd Blanche and the defense played that podcast, that Mea Culpa podcast, and you heard Michael Cohen's voice yelling and saying how much he would love to see Donald Trump behind bars. And the contrast between Michael Cohen on the stand and that podcast was so striking that that was a moment that the jury really did react. Now, did they react because they don't believe Cohen, or did they react just because of the incredible difference between what he was like in testimony and what he's like on his podcast? That's unclear. For the most part, as I was watching the jury, and I had my eyes pretty heavily on them during much of the time that I was in the courtroom, they were paying attention. They were following Todd Blanche, going back and forth between him and Michael Cohen. They almost didn't look at Donald Trump whatsoever. I saw one or two glances toward Donald Trump as he was sitting on the defense at the defense table, but mostly they were paying attention closely to the testimony, very stone-faced. You really couldn't read any reaction on their face. Besides that moment of the podcast, there was one other moment, and that was when Todd Blanche, right before lunch broke, when he got up there and he was building toward Michael Cohen having a faulty memory about an essential phone call that he says he had between Donald Trump in late October, where he told them that the Stormy Daniels matter was resolved. It was closed. He had dealt with it. He testified to this when the prosecution was on direct, and he was emphatic. He had no wavering whatsoever. Todd Blanche was able to point out that during the surrounding time of that phone call, he was having an issue with a 14-year-old boy who was harassing him, and he was sending text messages to Keith Schiller. And they tried to point out that Michael Cohen didn't actually remember the conversation that he had with Donald Trump, because he didn't have a conversation with Donald Trump. He had a conversation with Keith Schiller. Schiller never passed the phone to Donald Trump, and the whole conversation was about this 14-year-old boy. And Cohen, on the witness stand, admitted that it could have been also about the 14-year-old boy, still said he believes he spoke with Donald Trump, but there was wavering in his memory there, and that was a moment as Todd Blanche raised his voice for the first time and said that was a lie, almost in a Hollywood depiction of a gotcha moment in court. That was when the jurors really reacted. I saw smiles on faces. I saw eyebrows raised. But again, what are they reacting to? Are they reacting to Todd Blanche suddenly raising his voice and getting theatrical, or are they reacting to Michael Cohen's wavering memory?
Yeah, and Joyce, one is struck by that this has become such a big issue. The case is not about Michael Cohen, although Michael Cohen plays a key part in it. What kind of impact do you think this 2016 October call could have on the entire case?
So this case is a lot easier for prosecutors to win if the jury believes Michael Cohen. And juries will, I think, accept allegations that witnesses have lied in the past, but that they've had a moment in their lives where they're now on a better track and they're committed to telling the jury the truth. If the defense version of this story holds that Michael Cohen lied to the jury about this call, the prosecution is in trouble. But there are a lot of other possible explanations here. Cohen gave a plausible one on the witness stand, saying, well, it's possible that I talked to Schiller first, but then he passed the phone to Trump. Prosecutors will do redirect to clean this up and clarify the situation. They'll very likely argue that if Cohen was making a story up, he would have just picked one of any number of phone calls he placed directly to Trump. There would have been no need to peg the story of this particular call to a phone call that was placed first to Keith Schiller, the bodyguard. So those sorts of arguments and those sorts of clarifications can come together to resurrect the credibility of a witness who stumbles on cross-examination.
So, Barbara, what is the responsibility of cleanup, right, for the prosecution on this specific issue? Because it seems as though Cohen is the only one so far we've been seeing on the stand that ties Donald Trump directly to knowledge, intent, and everything else on this.
Yeah, so I think the prosecution has to think about how to portray this. In many ways, this is, to me, is much ado about nothing. This is exactly what the prosecution expected would happen with a witness like Michael Cohen. It's likely the reason the feds walked away from it. Whenever you use a cooperator who has baggage, this is what cross-examination looks like. So there's no surprise here. But, you know, a jury who's never seen this before, maybe they fall for it when someone like Todd Blanche starts raising his voice and claiming that he's lying and all these kinds of things. But these are all the same tricks that you see all the time by defense attorneys. So if you're the prosecution, do you sort of validate this moment by trying to clean it up on redirect, or you just let it go and then in closing argument argue both of these things are completely plausibly true, right? He called him about the 14-year-old boy, and while he's there, he says, oh, you're with the boss? Put me on with him. Hey, boss, I took care of that thing. So the idea that somehow he's caught him in a lie strikes me as really rather ridiculous. But if the prosecution is concerned, they would raise this again. They would ask Michael Cohen. Now, they say that you were talking about a 14-year-old boy. Is that right? Yeah. And were you talking about anything else? Yes. We also talked, I informed Mr. Trump that the deal was taken care of. So I think this is something that they can address either in redirect or in closing. I think for people who've never seen this before, it seems like an exciting gotcha moment, maybe because the rest has been so dull. But to me, this is just the way defense attorneys sometimes try to make a mountain out of a molehill.
The fact that the call was 90 seconds long does, you know, there needs to be some explanation, right? That how something like that could happen in 90 seconds.
Hey, boss, it's taken care of. What did that take? 5 seconds?
There you go. Hey, Katie, what do we know about what the defense case could look like if they decide to put one?
That's really up in the air right now. The defense has not committed to calling any witnesses. Once the prosecution rests, and we'll see if they have anything else other than Michael Cohen, they could potentially call somebody else to close their case. But if they do rest, the defense is going to have an opportunity to tell the judge whether they do plan on calling a witness, whether that might be, I don't know, one of the attorneys that Michael Cohen almost worked with, like Mr. Costello, or do they plan on calling Keith Schiller, the body man, since he's been the center of so much of this testimony that now is conflicting, or do they decide to call Donald Trump himself? They have not said what they plan on doing. We will get an answer, though, sooner than later, as it is pretty apparent that the prosecution is close to finishing.
Yeah, and meanwhile, there has been no real focus from the defense on the documents that have been presented in a very consistent fashion for, weeks now. That has been totally ignored by the defense. Barbara, what are you looking for on Monday?
Well, I think we're going to get some additional cross-examination and then some rebuttal by the prosecution. And it'll be interesting to see how much time the prosecution spends on rebuttal. It's sometimes, to me, a real power move in court was to stand up and say, the government has no questions for this witness, Mr. Cohen. It says to the jury, I don't think they laid a finger on him. But I do think there's some things that they ought to talk about here. I think probably this phone call issue to clean that up, as Joyce said. And I think the other one that I would talk about, they tried to make much of the idea that he lied to a judge when he pleaded guilty to tax fraud, when in fact he thinks that he did not. I think there's a very, again, plausible story there where he says that he does not dispute the facts. He just thinks that it was a wrongful decision by the prosecution to prosecute him for a crime instead of giving him a pass or dealing with it civilly or letting him just pay back the money. So I think that's another area that I would probably cover with him on cross. And then I guess we'll see whether the defense is going to put on any case at all. In most cases that I have ever tried, the defense actually puts on no case, and they rely solely on the government's failure to prove their case through cross-examination and closing argument.
Barbara McQuaid, Joyce Vance, and Katie Torr, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Really appreciate it. Up next, breaking overnight, dangerous storms hit the south, killing at least 4 people, and the threat is not over. Overseas, 8 trucks packed with supplies are now rolling off the new U.S.-built floating pier in Gaza. And later, the Biden campaign's push to win over black voters. We're back in 90 seconds. You're watching Jose Diaz Balart Reports on MSNBC.
my bag like a bunch of groceries. All this cheese and greens just come to me.
Freedom you can't take your eyes off. The new 2024 Jeep Wrangler and Gladiator. Jeep, there's only one.
Right now, during Jeep 4x4 season, get $2,000 bonus cash allowance on 2024 Jeep Gladiator and Wrangler models. Visit your local Jeep dealer today.
You know what's brilliant?